Okay, thanks. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Are you enjoying your Ignite so far? Ready for party tonight? Okay. So we're gonna discuss some security. So 10 things you need to build a rock-solid Azure tenant. Security is like a serious discussion, and obviously we won't be able to do much in 20 minutes. So we'll concentrate on 10 quick wins that you basically can go right after the session, go home and try to apply. My name is Mustafa Turaman. I come from Bosnia and Herzegovina. I work as a lead system engineer and program architect in a company of 30 partners. Here's also my Twitter handle. If I can be of any assistance, please feel free to contact me. I've been Microsoft Azure MVP for the last 4 years. I have a lot of Microsoft certification and so on. But let's cut to the chase and start discussing what we need to do. So first step for everyone in the cloud, it should be enable MFA. How many of you are using MFA right now? Nice, excellent. So what happens is that identities in the cloud are a bit different than what we were used to in on-prem environment. Even with the credential leaks, if someone obtained our user credentials, they would need to be able to access our local infrastructure, our network, to actually take advantage of those credentials. In the cloud, everything is open. Basically, anyone can try to connect from anyone in the world, so credential leak can be a serious problem. With very simple step, we can enable MFA for our users. There are multiple options. Most popular are definitely with our mobile phones. We can use phone call, SMS, application. Can you tell me, if you're using mobile phone for MFA, out of those three, phone call, SMS, and app, what is the most secure way? Sorry? App? Sir, in the second row, you have a book. Come over after the session. Thank you. So yeah, the app is. Why? Because of the possibility that we can clone the phone. But the app stays, so even if the number is cloned, no one will actually get the notification from the app. MFA is free for admins. It should be used always for anyone with elevated permissions, definitely. But even if regular users should use it as well. If possible, try enabling it as well for all the users. I heard people, because it's free from the for admin accounts, I heard people saying, so I make everyone an admin. I hope I don't have to explain how bad that idea is. Just run. So next thing is to use role-based access control. Did anyone here use the old version of Azure when it was in standard mode? Few hands. So back then, there wasn't much of a security control in there. So if I wanted to give access to someone who needed access to only single virtual machine, I want him to manage one virtual machine, I would have that person added as a co-administrator on the subscription level. There was nothing else. All I could do was add person to a subscription level as a co-admin, and by only need for one virtual machine, that person would have access to everything. Resource Manager introduced role-based access controls that give us granularity. We can control what can be used and how. So basically, we can use a lot of layers. We can basically say, okay, from the manager groups, subscriptions, resource groups, and even resources, we can enable user to have access and some kind of control even at the resource level. There are multiple predefined roles that you can choose. That's also very important. It's something that fits in the just enough administration perspective, where you don't give users too much of the control. You give them what they need. If someone needs to control virtual machines and only, for example, monitor them or be able to reboot them if necessary, you don't need to give that person an admin privilege. It's enough to give a VM contributor option or something similar. So it enables us to give enough permissions to do our job, but not too many permissions that can be taken advantage of. Also, try using privileged identity management if possible. Privileged identity management is another part of this. It's not just enough administration, but just in time administration. What does it mean? So even if I'm given certain admin rights, I have some elevated permissions, I can do some work, they are not enabled on my account by default. So even if my credentials are leaked and someone manages to pass my authentication, even with MFA enabled and everything, my admin roles are not present by default. I actually have to go to a different portal, activate my admin role for a certain period of time, and do my work. This gives us more security. So basically, when the account is leaked and maybe misused, the attacker has to know that stolen credentials need to be activated to actually do some real damage on our resources. Okay, so next part is about endpoint. And are any of you using infrastructure as a service? Some hands? Okay. So first step, if you're using infrastructure as a service with the virtual networks, first step would be definitely to use network security groups. Network security groups gives us options to control what can come in and out. Network security group can be attached either on the NIC level to control traffic on the single virtual machine, or they can be assigned to subnets. My recommendation would be to go with the subnet options, because when you pass a certain number of virtual machines, it will be really, really hard to handle the traffic and all the rules between network security groups on virtual machine level or the NIC level. Also, optionally, there's an option to use Azure Firewall, a bit more expensive option, but gives you more control besides controlling IP addresses and ports. It gives you route-based control and something that we might control in our local environments, more familiar firewall options. For other resources, we have Web Application Firewall. Web Application Firewall is basically what it is a level 7 load balancer that can detect certain issues for you. So basically, if we have a SQL injection, vulnerability in our application, Web Application Firewall is able to detect those kind of threats and stop them before reaching your application. So it's a really convenient way that can amend some issues that you might have on your application level. Next thing we have is to use Azure Key Vault. Very important part, something that we had to handle in our local environments was always secrets, passwords, certificates, connection strings, also newer to the cloud infrastructure as a code option. Very important how we manage those stuff and how we manage everything that happens in our environment. So basically, with a lot of services having different secrets, passwords, certificates that can be read if enough permission is given on different resources, with Key Vault we can protect them, and service actually detects what kind of secret password and certificate is used directly from the Key Vault, and Key Vault, those values in Key Vault are visible only to certain users. Even the administrators cannot be, don't have to be aware of what those values are, or not even have enough permissions to see them. Similar things go with the connection strings. When it comes to infrastructure as a code, a lot of services, when we create them, require certain passwords, usernames to be provided during the deployment. Infrastructure as a code best practice is to use repositories so we can reuse our scripts and templates. But if we keep the passwords and usernames in the scripts, that might be a problem. Key Vault gives us another option that those usernames and passwords are read directly from the Key Vault, and in the scripts we can use a reference to the Key Vault saying where those secrets are stored, and to be retrieved during the deployment. In this way, even the person who is deploying the service, this person might not be the person that is going to use the service in the future. So even the person that is deploying the service might not be aware of what the credentials are or how to use that service, how to access it. Next thing would be to encrypt your data, and I would say here additionally. So everything in Azure is encrypted at rest. So all your data stored in this, inside the Azure data centers, in the racks, is encrypted at rest, but we might need some additional things. Here steps, again, a key vault that can be used for additional encryption on this. Maybe best example of this would be virtual machines and virtual machine disks. So basically, as I said, these disks are encrypted at rest inside the Azure data center. So if someone pulled the disk out of the rack, it's encrypted and they couldn't do much with that data. But what would happen, so if we have permissions to see this virtual machine in Azure Portal or any other tools, PowerShell, CLI, what happens to that disk? We can download that disks. And once we download them, we can do with them whatever we want. They are not encrypted anymore. Once they leave the Azure data center, they live in the unencrypted state. So that disk can be used to either recreate new Azure virtual machine, or we can attach it even to a local Hyper-V to access that data on that disk. If we want to prevent such an access, if we want to stop people who have access to those virtual machines to actually use those disks in maybe a bad way, we can apply additional encryption. Once those disks are downloaded, they are going to still be encrypted with our keys from the key vault. So that's additional step that we might take. It doesn't only apply to disks. There are other data services, Azure SQL databases, etc., that can be encrypted in same way. So once the data leaves disk, when we export or backup something to a different location, that data will still be encrypted. One of my favorite services in Azure is definitely Azure Security Center. Does anyone use it right now? That's good to hear. Okay, so Azure Security Center is basically our central place for security that can give us a lot of insight of how are we doing in security matters. There are a lot of dashboards, reports telling us what's happening with our resources. Also a lot of reports telling us what needs to be done regarding our resources. It's basically monitoring our whole Azure infrastructure and comparing it to the best practices and telling us, okay, you're missing certain endpoints, you're missing endpoint protection, you miss encryption, telling us what we need to do to increase our security and make it even better. It's basically a central place, especially in the terms if you're trying to reach a certain security certification, for example, SOC2, ISO certification, etc. All of those inputs on what needs to be done to be compliant with those standards is already in there, so you can go through the list and basically go resource by resource and apply those settings yourself. So basically it scans your complete environment and based on those security standards tells you this, on this resource you need to fix this to actually be compliant. So it's really convenient place to watch and try to apply most of the recommendation. Also, a lot of reports. Security incidents can be tracked and found there. So it's also interesting in the terms of auditing and seeing what was happening in the past with your resources. Okay, so another thing, it's linked to the Azure Security Center, but with the virtual machines as well, similar to what we have previous on the identity level, just-in-time access for the virtual machines. Now, The best way to handle access to virtual machines, if you have to RDP to those virtual machines for management, would be definitely to have some kind of secure access using either site-to-site connections or at least point-to-site connections. But unfortunately, that is not always possible, and you have to enable RDP access to the public IP addresses. Now, I hope I don't have to explain how bad of idea it is, but I'll tell you a little test I did. So I created 4 virtual machines, blank 4 virtual machines, nothing on them. Completely irrelevant virtual machines with public access on the RDP. So what happens is bad guys are scanning all the possible IP addresses and trying to figure out what's open. And once they detect that that public IP address has actually opened any kind of, not only RDP, but any kind of management port, they're going to try to hit it. It's going to be brute force attack. So for those 4 virtual machines, each of them got hit 40,000 times with brute force attacks in 2 weeks. So that's like, Microsoft has a way of kind of keeping you in a good place, because when you create a virtual machine, a lot of usernames are not allowed, like admin, sysadmin, root, SA, and etc. So you cannot use those names when you're creating virtual machine. But still, when you go to the report, I was in the Azure Security Center, you can see the list of those brute force attacks detected. There's even an option to remediate attack and say, okay, block those IP addresses where these attempts are coming from. But I was watching what kind of attacks were coming, and 95% of the attempts actually use those forbidden usernames. So that's basically a good thing. But again, there are always a chance that brute force attack will go through. So try using just-in-time access, enabling it. If you really have to enable public access RDP, it will enable you similar option to privileged identity management, when you actually have to connect that to that virtual machine. Basically, connection is blocked. You have to go to the portal and enable your access. You have option to enable it from my current IP address or for a certain IP address range, and we have option to enable it for a certain period of time. The time can go from 1 hour to 3 hours. Once that time expires, you actually have to enable it once again if you want to continue with that, with access to that virtual machine. Newest thing that we have regarding security is definitely Azure Sentinel. Did anyone try that for now? Nice, okay. So Azure Sentinel actually gives you option for the new monitoring of your cloud, but also gives you option to import different data sources, so you can even import your on-prem. If you're using things like Splunk or System Center or something else to collect logs, those logs can be imported to Azure Sentinel as well. So there are multiple data connectors. We are currently using it with Palo Alto logs as well. So there are a lot of things. So basically what it is, it's a SIEM. It collects all the possible data from all the possible data sources from across your enterprise, but also gives you live analytics on what's going on. And using Microsoft algorithms and threat detection, it can even detect possible security issues while they're happening. So it's a really good option that can tell you basically what happens in the usual environment if we get hacked. Usually we find out after between 6 and 9 months, because study shows that most of the attacks are detected after that period of time. This actually gives us a live input and can tell us on spot that something is going on in the environment, and we can take response right away. For the questions, we don't have enough time. We are at the end of the session already, but I'm hanging around. I'm usually around Community Central, so if you have any kind of questions, come talk to me. I will try to respond if I can. Thank you, and don't forget to vote for your sessions. Thank you.